to the FTC and recent antitrust and tech cases. So President Trump has set out a very ambitious agenda to usher in a new golden age for American innovation. His focus on deregulation and eliminating government waste are noble and necessary endeavors. However, the FTC, or the Federal Trade Commission's leadership, appears to be taking positions on business growth and antitrust law that threaten the Trump agenda. So let's welcome in Patrick Hedger, who is NetChoice Director of Policy. So where's the FTC and the Trump administration clashing?
Yeah, so the Trump administration is absolutely right to identify that we need to lead the future of innovation, especially in a race against China. And then nowhere is that more apparent than in artificial intelligence or AI. But unfortunately, what we're seeing is the continuation of a lot of cases that were shaped by the Biden administration going after America's leading AI innovators and investors, which are the major tech companies. And the way they're going about a lot of these cases, forget the impact that they would have on Meta, for example, which is one of the companies that's being sued by the FTC. The precedent that these cases would set would send a chilling effect to markets that would create a lot of uncertainty in the future and harm the ability for these companies to invest and expand AI.
And that really seems problematic on face, because if America isn't involved, as J.D. Vance has recognized in a couple of, I think, brilliant speeches talking about AI, and that America should be at the forefront of this because we need to have at least some contours and regulation that are good, but not to overly regulate it, which is always the problem and the balance. But if America is just burdened by all of this litigation, then other countries like China will continue to expand and be so far ahead of the game that it'll be very difficult for America to catch up.
Yeah, and I understand the impetus behind a lot of this, the angst against technology companies, but I think a lot of that is misplaced. I mean, we saw evidence that a lot of what was happening was pressure coming from the federal government to take down and silence people. And so, continuing to pursue the tech companies when they are really sort of at the forefront and on the front lines of making those necessary investments in creating AI technology and quantum computing, for example, another technology that was going to be really important in the future, especially for defense applications as well, I think is a big mistake. I think the president is absolutely right to be laser focused on creating a golden age through AI investments. The second day he was in office, he took time to talk about the importance of data centers for AI through the Stargate announcement, talking about half a trillion dollars in new investment coming into the United States with just that one project alone. But these cases we're seeing at FTC and DOJ would cause companies to pause that type of investment, because if you look at the FTC's case against Meta, they're trying to unwind mergers that they made, acquisitions that they made over a decade ago, and that's a pretty bad signal to investors.
And what's the purpose of the FTC trying to go after Meta in that way? I mean, if this has been a decade in the making, why are they just now targeting Meta?
Yeah, that's a good question. And these were acquisitions, WhatsApp and Instagram, that were acquired by Meta over a decade ago that the FTC said at the time that they weren't going to take action on. So they essentially blessed these mergers, and now the company is in sort of an effective double jeopardy, if you will. And what they're trying to say is that Meta monopolized the friends and family social media marketplace. But on its face, I think most people understand that they face competition from TikTok. They face competition from X. We've recently seen that Meta, Facebook, has changed its content moderation to do more community notes, just like Elon Musk's X. And so that shows that the market is still really dynamic. And I just think that this kind of antitrust intervention is not warranted and is probably going to do a lot more harm than good.
Yeah, and so what would be the Trump administration's potential avenues to respond to this, and especially in light of this January 23rd presidential action statement that's literally titled "Removing Barriers to American Leadership in Artificial Intelligence," and clearly the administration wants to be at the forefront of this. Should the FTC be able to step in and slow that down?
Yeah, I think the Trump administration really, at any time, increasingly is saying that the FTC is not so much an independent agency, but is an agency that should be responsive to the executive. And, this is something that the Trump administration has said that, we're going to start reining in so-called independent agencies. And so the Trump administration really at any time could say, hey, let's settle these cases. Let's move on because we've got a lot bigger fish to fry. And that fish is certainly China's entry into the AI marketplace and also quantum computing, robotics, driverless cars, drones, things like that. All of these are really important technologies where the Chinese are either nipping at our heels in AI or actually are ahead of us in terms of robotics.
And I'm speaking with Patrick Hedger, who is the NetChoice Director of Policy. And if the Trump administration seeks to dictate to the FTC how to settle, for example, this case against Meta, is that going to create a potential clash like the litigation that's suggesting that Trump, for example, can't fire certain executive office holders or agents and sort of set up whether or not these agencies can act independently or whether they are submissive and responsible overall to the chief executive?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. That all does come down to what the Supreme Court is going to say about Humphrey's executor. That is the overriding precedent on this issue of independent agencies. But we've increasingly seen that the FTC has branded itself as the Trump-Vance FTC. And so I think they would be responsive to a call from the White House if the White House said, "Hey, look, these cases are holding back some of our other objectives here, which again is greater investment in AI, and that investment is not just in software; it's in a lot of hardware as well. You talk about what powers AI; it is data centers, and these are buildings that are filled with servers, and they take a lot of steel and they take a lot of concrete and create a lot of jobs in the process of producing them, and a lot of investment in communities. So there's a lot riding here on these cases.
And so if the FTC is framing it as the Trump-Vance FTC, so to align with President Trump's vision that he's outlined for this golden age of innovation, what should they do at this point, and even before necessarily being ordered to by the administration?
Yeah, I think increasingly the cases are looking flimsy, and you're wasting taxpayer resources in pursuing sort of an uncertain end, and it's also creating, again, the deterrent effect towards investment and innovation that we've been talking about. So it would be good to start looking for off-ramps, start looking for acceptable settlements in order to kind of let unleash these companies in order to be able to do the kind of investment and innovation that we need to kind of fulfill the Trump administration's agenda on AI.
And how does this also reconcile with Trump's previous digital Bill of Rights that his campaign put out, which we haven't heard a whole lot about? I mean, but there's been obviously a lot of other things going on in the last couple of months.
Yeah, so the Trump administration has been great about saying, hey, we're going to put an end to what we saw in the federal government in terms of putting pressure on companies to silence speech. And I think that's really the nexus of the problem that we saw. And I think the administration would be wise to begin working with Congress to codify those things so that when the Trump administration is no longer in power, we don't just have a Democratic president reinstitute all those policies and scrap what the Trump administration is trying to do. We need to put some permanency to these things by codifying them. Senator Rand Paul has a bill that would do that. So I think that would be a good next step.
Yeah, well, again, with so many other things, that all depends on Congress, and Congress doesn't seem to be moving nearly as quickly as President Trump and his administration and with the mandate that the American people provided. But Patrick Hedger, really appreciate your time this morning. He's the NetChoice Director of Policy. You can follow NetChoice on X at NetChoice.